Hey, so Malik Moore asked me to do a vlog on book recommendations or like a book review of books that I've read. So I'm mainly going to make recommendations of books that I enjoyed reading, that I found to be very helpful and definitely made an impression on me, um, and kind of definitely helped form some of my ideas. So it's quite a few, but I'll try to go through the list as efficiently as possible. So yeah, the first one, I mean, the book that I enjoyed the most in high school. Well, actually, I should give a little background. So I really started reading when I was probably about 3 or 4. We used to go to the library in Mississauga, Ontario, and I used to read books like Beverly Clearly, Clifford the Big Red Dog, Choose Your Own Adventure. And actually, Choose Your Own Adventure was one of my favorites as like a 5-year-old or 6-year-old, 7-year-old. Definitely by the time I was, 8 or 9. And yeah, so I actually really did enjoy reading, and I did enjoy writing. My first diary started when I was, I don't know, 7 or 8 or something around there in Canada. Actually, my mom took it away from me because I wrote some cuss words in it, particularly fuck. And had she not taken it away from me, I probably would have just kept writing right through, even through grade school and high school. But I was enjoying the words and stuff. So, but by the time I got to high school, the book that I really liked and what became my favorite book was Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. And the reason why I liked that book is because Holden Caulfield was really interesting to me. He actually, so he had a big adventure, I think, in New York City where he, was doing things that were, I guess, kind of disregarding the norm and disregarding really the expectations that probably his parents and his teachers at his private school had for him. And from what I recall, I mean, this has been a while back, and I wasn't reading necessarily as carefully then as I did like in college or medical school or since. But my understanding is he went to like New York City, had a big fun time. He wasn't doing well in his school. He kind of like flunked out of his private school. And I think he might have ended up like in a psych ward at one point. And then one of his teachers came, talked to him. They tried to help him out, but I think he got kicked out of his school. But yeah, anybody who knows that book better than I can definitely correct me on that. But yeah, it was definitely one of my favorite books by J.D. Salinger. The other books that were really notable were A Movable Feast and by Ernest Hemingway. Grapes of Wrath, although I didn't read that whole thing, but I might even go back and try to read that at some point. And definitely F. Scott Fitzgerald's Great Gatsby. I liked F. Scott Fitzgerald, and specifically The Great Gatsby, because he really contrasted the old rich with the new rich. And I think it was particularly somewhere in New York, if I remember correctly. It provided some insight into those worlds, specifically in the United States. Me being from Jamaica, that insight was really valuable and really interesting, because it is different, at least culturally, between Jamaica and the U.S. So some of the other books, Da Vinci Code, when I read that in medical school, and I liked that because it gave me some perspective on the Catholic Church. Although my understanding is like the Pope and the priests and the bishops don't really, like that book or cater to it at all, and don't think it's very valid. But while it might not be completely historically accurate in every single detail, it does provide some insight into like some of the politics that do go on, I think, in the Catholic Church, maybe in a different realm. I just don't know every single detail because that would be a long career in itself. That one's by Dan Brown. A couple others from high school was specifically Native Son by Richard Wright, and a book that my mother purchased, which I kind of snuck from her because she didn't really want me to read it when I was like in 8th grade or something, was Black Boy, which was also by Richard Wright, which kind of provided a lot of, insight into like, I guess, being black in America in some level, because that's kind of the plot or the background behind both of those books, Native Son and Black Boy. And then later on, Mein Kampf by Hitler. That was really insightful for me, although it's controversial. And I mean, a lot of it is because, Hitler definitely focused on genes, although he was not particularly the scientist and probably had some flaws in his thinking, um, he definitely understood something about genetics, and that highlighted that for me and provided insight into how Adolf kind of was accomplished what he did, which he definitely accomplished something, and he definitely left a mark on Earth. There's no doubt about that. Les Miserables, or Les Mis by Victor Hugo. That is definitely one of my favorite books, and I actually read probably about 900 pages of that. I really sat and read that after seeing the play in London with Namisha. Let's see. And I think some notable, definitely notable books that, definitely any scientist or biologist or evolutionist should read, and pretty much anybody should read, are like Charles Darwin's books, particularly, for instance, The Descent of Man. If you're interested in race and ethnicity and evolution of those things, then there's also Carlton Stevens Kuhn, who I think, is very adept at what he did. I mean, I definitely don't disagree with a lot of his analysis, although I don't come from the exact same viewpoint. And even the writings by John Philip Rushton and Richard Lynn. I think there's a lot of value in those books too. Some things I like from the past that I've, dabbled in, but I haven't really had all the, whatever the classic books are or all the classic writings, but I've definitely read a lot either online of, it really has to do with the Greeks and like Aristotle and Plato, and I think it's important to know those people because they definitely, founded some of the critical ideas that hold true till today, and kind of helped to lead us on a path, in humanity to where we are. And clearly, William Shakespeare. This I read in high school, and it was Macbeth, Othello, and Romeo and Juliet. I really liked Macbeth, a king going crazy about his kingdom and all the things going on or whatnot. Is really my interpretation of a lot of Macbeth. I'm not sure if it was specifically the king or another character, but I do know one guy goes insane, and that was really, attractive on some level and definitely interesting to me, something I definitely wanted to understand. So later on, so I'm kind of going back and forth, but in the years after taking time away from residency and coming back to Boston, I really started honing in on some other people, some Germans, to be quite honest, who I wanted to understand. I'd heard about, and I liked them because they kind of forged their own path. And one in particular is Nietzsche. So I definitely read a book about Nietzsche and also read a little bit of his writings. If you want the name of that, I can look that name up. I do have that book with me. And then obviously Freud, Sigmund, obviously I had learned a little bit about him from my mother, specifically the Oedipus Rex complex and the id and the ego and the superego. She used to always tell me about the id, ego, and superego, which goes back to Freud. But he also, discussed a lot about sexuality and wrote a lot about kind of like the innate motivations of a human, like what makes us tick kind of thing, which I guess for him comes back to sex, which I agree with. And also C.S. Lewis. I read one of C.S. Lewis's books. I think it was a period when he was going through depression. From the Catholic influence, Thomas Merton is somebody that wrote a lot. And I think for Merton, it had a lot to do with his conflict about whether or not God existed, is my understanding. I haven't read all or much of his works, but I've definitely dabbled in one of his books. And then there's a lot of medical and surgical books that I particularly like because I do like understanding the human body and the knowledge that we have, or rather human bodies, because it's really a collection of information from a collection of humans' bodies and other animals. So like Harrison's, I'm not suggesting that anybody just pick up a Harrison's and just start reading, definitely not from like age 2 or 5 or 10. But anybody who's medically inclined, those books will make a difference, even in high school or college, definitely by college, but, without a doubt, definitely by medical school. So Harrison's, Sabiston's, Greenfield, Schwartz, Zollinger. Zollinger is an athlete, an atlas of surgical procedures, some really common surgical procedures that would be considered bread and butter. And then other articles. The articles aren't easy to find, but if you do find them, they actually usually end up being quite valuable because they distill a lot of specific information into 10 pages or 5 pages or 15 pages, but they're usually very technical. Beyond that, I do like books on anatomy, books on physiology, books on soccer, history, and for history, though, I find that there's a lot on YouTube that is really helpful for understanding history, especially history of places that you did not grow up in, where it wasn't integrated in yours, mine, or ours education. But I especially like the history of Jamaica, the West Indies, obviously the United States, since I did much of my schooling here, Canada as well, but Europe, especially, England, Britain also, and to some extent Ireland. Those are probably the places that I've really wanted to understand the most. In Germany, and obviously World War I and World War II, But yeah, definitely any place on Earth, and with that in the universe. Although to understand the universe, it really takes physics. There's no doubt about that. Like the E equals MC squared stuff in Stephen Hawking's. All right, so other books. I think that covers a lot of the books that I really do like and I hold in high regard. Although, any book has some kind of value to it. And yeah, I also do like my own novels. I do know that I don't stick to all the most proper grammar all the time. Partly to show, my multiracialness, because being multiracial, I have influences from different races. And I think that's probably apparent in my writing, because I do go between forms that might be considered whiter, browner, or blacker even. But, it's partly genetic, to be quite honest. I mean, it's partly because that's inherent in the genes that are in my body. And it comes out. I mean, I've even noticed that. I'm definitely more conscious of that now, especially after reading Mein Kampf and understanding Hitler, as well as obviously Gregor Mendel and Charles Darwin and some of the others that I already listed. But yeah, there's a lot of Germans, a lot of Americans, a lot of Brits, and some Canadians, and then probably also Australians. I mean, there's a lot, but definitely North American and the British Isles. There's a lot in those regions on this. So if you guys have any questions, definitely let me know. Leave a comment. You can type a question there. You can email me directly. You can even call me, because at this point I definitely have time to take calls. And I'll definitely do my best to answer all the questions and any question. And, if I don't know, I can even possibly refer you to a friend or a doctor or, a surgeon even, because I do have connections. I do have some of those connections, and, they might be able to help you better, or a scientist. Anything in the science world, medical, surgical, even psychiatric, I have a lot of connections in those world, as well as probably in business and in football, soccer, football specifically. And then the other way you can find out some of the books that I've read, I definitely went through and, added my data to Goodreads. I have a Goodreads account, and I clicked away on pretty much all the books that I could remember reading and all the books that I, knew I had read or saw that and, recognized because I had read them. So I'll definitely put a link to my Goodreads account at the bottom where you can go and see those books if you're interested in knowing what I've read in particular. But yeah, there are some books that I've read that are not on Goodreads because either I just didn't take the time to recall every single title, or because I didn't see it. So yeah, definitely, I definitely appreciate any likes on my videos. I definitely appreciate any subscriptions and, all the views, because it obviously does make a difference. And I especially appreciate any commentary, because I do appreciate that interaction as I kind of move forward with my ideas and career. So yeah, just so you know, my name is Adrian Dane Kenny. And at this point, I'm writing and authoring a lot of books. I do some consulting. I have a little research firm, but it pretty much all functions as a sole proprietorship and as freelance work. And I even have started my own little hospital, which focuses on wellness and prevention of disease, specifically and primarily through nutrition, as well as exercise, and making the healthiest choices possible. The goal of my my hospital, which is Jamway Hospital, is to maximize health and optimize performance. Although I also am willing, especially with athletes, footballers, soccer players, footballistas, to help them maximize their performance while optimizing their health, because that is usually what leads to becoming a professional soccer player or footballer or footballista, playing in England, United States, Canada, Spain, Germany, or any league, France, any league, Europe, Asia, anywhere on Africa, anywhere in the West Indies, Jamaica, pretty much anywhere on Earth, Australia, every continent, right? Except for Antarctica and the Arctic. So if you have any interest in that, definitely contact me and I will be in touch. That's something that's very important to me. As one of my primary goals as a kid was definitely to become a professional athlete. And that was either going to be soccer or ice hockey. I realize this is a tangent, but I might as well let y'all get to know me. But my leg was actually broken as a member or trainee with the under-20 Jamaica national team. And it was Alvin Chinsu who cracked my right fibula. I heard the crack, couldn't put much weight or any weight on my right foot. And they did an x-ray after giving me a pain injection. And that was pretty much the end of my football career with regard to my hopes to make it to a World Cup and be plucked out of Jamaica into England, Spain, or Germany, like a lot of footballers. So I ended up in medical school, which I really did appreciate, and I really learned a lot. It was worth it. I mean, if I could do it my way, I would have done both. Had an excellent soccer career, played for Real Madrid, hung out with Marcelo and Cristiano and Gareth Bale and Pepe and Sergio Ramos and all those others. And then after that, gone to Harvard Medical School. I think I would have still chosen Harvard, and especially if they still would have chosen me. So that's it for me. If you have any questions about these book recommendations or reviews, you have any comments or any corrections, just put those in the comments also, and definitely, connect with me if you have any interest in any of these things. If you need any supplemental assistance, whether it be educational or athletic or even professional, I'm definitely available, and I'm definitely willing to work either through consulting or online emails and advice as time permits in those situations. And I also do tutoring, so you can contact me for that. Specifically, biology is the biggest area, as well as medicine. But I can tutor in the other sciences too, such as chemistry, organic chemistry, physics. And, I can even help out with English, although I'm not, professionally trained in English as a English major or literary person. And obviously I can even assist with people who are trying to get into surgery, as that was one of my goals and something that I read a lot about. I do know a lot of the fundamentals of general surgery, although I'm not practicing particularly as a trained general surgeon. So definitely feel free to contact me. And obviously a shout out to Malik Moore for his request of book recommendations and book reviews. And I hope he and everybody else finds this helpful. If you have any ideas for content that you would like to see or you would like to know, a specific research question, specific topic, something you just want to understand better or want a different perspective on, you can definitely reach out to me, because I'm more than happy to do that. And all right, have a great day. Talk to y'all later. Bye.